The ashes of today are the sparks of tomorrow. By XX Misery Smiles XX. Read by Kaiinbed. Chapter 35. R/Heroes Off Duty posted. Pro heroes Hawks and Miracle spotted out on the town last night, marking the third major public sighting of the number one hero in almost 8 months. One image attached. Lady Nagnant Apologist 44. This is the best thing I've seen all day. Thank you, God. I didn't know I needed this. Oppa Homeless Style. Who's the girl holding the dog? Also, why do they have a dog? So many questions. SMH. UG Simp 443. Since when does Hawks have bird feet? Put those grippers away. That useless lesbian. I'm like 70% sure that's President Mike's oldest daughter. And about 100% sure like half my problems could be solved if I had her number. Kasuko Anita. Why are y'all focused on some crusty nobody when our goddess Miracle is literally right there? Miss Lunatic. Dude, is Miracle cracking the watermelon open with her thighs? That shit's crazy. Vigilante Tits 69. God, I wish that watermelon were me. Oddball 7047. To everyone saying this is irresponsible or not heroic behavior, heroes aren't supposed to be the perfect role models. They're supposed to protect us. Y'all sound like the Commission. Hey, said Hawks as they bent over a puzzle of a bookstore. All muted canvas book bindings and velvety golden light painting shimmers over the delicate artwork. Dabi had already completed the border and had moved on to the shelves, while Hawks struggled to find all the pieces to the store sign. Can I take you out this Wednesday? Dabi cocked an eyebrow. Like, on a date or bullet to the head kind of deal? Hawks gave him a long, unimpressed stare, finally managing to find another part of the sign border. Dabi shrugged. Look, in my line of work, it's not a bad question. If you want, I can do both, I guess. But I'd miss you. Hawks deadpanned, shaking his head. Dabi pretended to consider it. Really depends. Where would you take me first? Cat Cafe? Hawks offered. Dabi nodded. Sold. Death by cats is an acceptable way to go out any day in my book. God, you're adorable. Hawks laughed. I also should probably mention that I may have told Tomura I was going to have you call her. That soured the mood instantly. Dabi huffed, glaring. Why the hell would you do that? Hawks bit his lip, fiddling with the white and gold braided bracelet on his wrist. Well, she's gone through the whole rehabilitation process you're gonna be in, especially since you want to go back into education. I thought you two should talk it over. She might be able to help. And what makes you think I'd ever want help from her? Dabi spat, crossing his arms. Hawks sighed. In my defense, I remember being rather tipsy at the time. Dabi raised an eyebrow. Only you would try to have a serious conversation about the future while out clubbing. Hawks flushed, holding up his hands in a what can you do type gesture. It sounds about right. He paused. So you'll do it? Dabi examined the insufferably hopeful expression that had bloomed over Hawks' face, then sighed, shaking his head. Fine, but only because I love you. Hawks cheered, leaning over to kiss him on the cheek. Dabi forced himself not to smile. Knock it off. You're gonna knock puzzle pieces off the damn table, and then this won't ever be complete. Dabi didn't want to do this. Like, really didn't want to do this. The only reason he didn't let himself be roped in was because Hawks' smile had the unfortunate power of wiping out every rational part of his brain and replacing it with happily humming static. He wondered if it was part of his quirk, a bird thing of some sort, then hesitantly admitted to himself that he was probably just absolutely fucked. Typing in the number Hawks had sent them, he pressed call and brought it up to his ear, laying back and letting it ring out. His birdie was down playing koi koi with Janu and Haruka, while Ogawa tended to a few other patients on her schedule. He slipped away, mentioning he had to make a call, and Hawks had given him an encouraging thumbs up that almost made him not regret ever saying yes. Finally, the call was answered with a click. scratchy voice responding in a shaky drawl. Who is it this time? If you're selling me something, drop dead. It was like a knife scraping against the plate, that sarcastic, drippy tone. Dabi tried to resist a growing urge to reach through the speaker and burn her face off. It's Dabi. Oh. Tomura's words turned more smug. What do you want now? Where did this crusty cockroach get off, thinking she was hot as shit? It's just about school, you stupid bitch. Don't get ahead of yourself. He grit out. Tomura let out a vaguely deranged hyena laugh. Misogyny isn't a pretty look on you, bastard. Though, I guess none of the other customization options are either. So you do you. He could practically hear the smirk in her voice. Dabi growled. I don't hate women. I just hate you in particular. I'm flattered, she said dryly. I also hate myself, actually. We have so much in common already. Before I know it, I'll look like a roasted potato too. Shut the hell up. Do you have to be such a sarcastic bitch? Dabi griped, fist clenching and unclenching at his sides. Your charisma stats really are off the charts today, huh? Tomura drawled. What do you want to know about school? Dabi threw up his hands, gritting his teeth and closing his eyes to fight off the wave of annoyance threatening to boil him over. He'd gotten pretty good at controlling his anger, but some things, his father, faulty tech, broken vending machines, and Shigaraki Tomura, just got to him like nothing else. Keigo said you'd talk with me about getting my GED or whatever, he managed. Keigo? Tomura asked, caught off guard by the confusion. Hawks, Dabi corrected, sighing. Oh! Tomura coughed roughly. Yeah, he said something about that, didn't he? Also, just gotta say, you've got really weird taste in men. Really? Dabi asked, incredulous. I'm the person you're saying that to? Natsu has never tried to go to a bar and order a pound of raw chicken at 2 a.m. Tomura snipped, and Dabi stared into space for a second, before sighing once more at the remarkable dedication his boyfriend had to the art of being a complete dumbass. It was in that moment of his guard slipping that he finally registered how completely out of it Tomura sounded. Under biting tone, she sounded absolutely exhausted. Against his better judgment, Dabi asked, You good? Fucking fantastic. Why wouldn't I be? Fuck off. She snapped, and the annoyance was back. Well, sorry for accidentally giving a fuck. I sure won't make that mistake again, I guess. He hissed. Tomura let out a long sigh, coughing again before responding. It turns out my good mood for the past 3 weeks was just my body's last hurrah before it decided to finally collapse in on itself and put me at critical health. I'm like 70% sure my HRT is messing with my other skill modifiers, making my manic episodes worse or something. Either way, I feel like shit and want to dust the building so it collapses on me, and I can respawn in hell or whatever. Dabi considered it. Why not? I mean, it's not the best strategy, but usually burning down some old houses or something always made me feel better. Tomura snorted in contempt. Some dumb fuck decided that murder was illegal at some point, and now I'm banned from doing it. So yeah, not exactly the best option. She sighed. I've just been making paper cranes and then dusting them. There was a crinkling of paper in the background. Dabi snorted in derision. Seriously? That's the best thing you could think to do? He could practically hear the scowl in her voice. I gave some to Natsu, and Kaiju ate one, so I'm helping the economy. I'm feeding the poor and needy. She paused. Enough about me and my bullshit mental stability score. What do you want to know about school? Dabi sat back, considering. Was getting your GED easy? Tomura scoffed. Like hell. I spent like a week locked in my room studying. Hitoshi tries to get Dad to install a cat flap so they could give me meals. She let out a huff. I usually wouldn't admit this unless under the threat of death, but you have a pretty decent intelligence score. At least you were a valuable player with the old party, so you might have some luck. Dabi blinked, surprised. Did you just compliment me? Absolutely not, Tomura snarled. Don't get that fat head of yours blown up any more than it already is, asshole. I'm sorry, what was that? Dobby asked because he was an asshole, and might as well do her the decency of letting her be right for once. You say you were jealous of how smart and hot I am? Jeez, Tomura. Didn't know you thought of me that way, but I'm chuffed. Tomura responded by hissing like a goddamn cat. I'm gonna dust your fucking face next time I see you, you rat. Dobby cackled, surprised by how much lighter he felt. I'd like to see you try, bitch. Settling back down, he grinned. So, how do you sign up? Is there like an online course I could do? Well, Tomura drawled reluctantly. I found out after I enrolled that I didn't even need a GED to go to the classes at community college, so that was fun. I think you do need one if you want to do a 4-year program. What do you even want to do? Social work, Dobby replied hesitantly. So I think I'll need a bachelor's at least. Could I get that there? Tomura grunted. Beats me. I'm working to become a programmer. One of Hitoshi's friends from school is planning to take an internship with a support company, so I'm looking to get in too, and help with some of the tech stuff. Really though, I want to go into game development if I get the chance. How original, Dobby drawled. Shut the fuck up, Tomura snapped. Dobby chuckled in spite of himself. Thanks, by the way, for the help. There was a pause. Don't mention it, she finally grumbled, the sound of paper being crumpled up momentarily filling the speakers afterwards. Dobby hummed, turning back to the conversation. Anyways, where did you go? With a resigned sigh, she continued. Well, anyways. Later, Dobby gets a text from an unknown number, simply reading help with an image attached. At first, he worries it's some type of threat, but it quickly dissipates when he sees the image of a wooden floor, absolutely covered in misshapen paper cranes. He saves the contact, resisting the urge to smile. They picked the cat cafe down in Musutafu. That was popular, but not too famous to be overly crowded. When they walked in, a tired-sounding voice greeted them. Hey there, welcome in. You here for an hour or something? Hawks looked up and barked out a surprised laugh when purple eyes met his. Hitoshi! Hitoshi's eyes flickered with recognition. Hawks, Dobby, didn't know birds like cats. Hawks laughed, jerking a thumb towards his boyfriend. He's the cat guy here. I'm just tagging along. Good taste, Shinso mused, nodding at Dobby. Taking their money, he led them through its side door into a room full of cats. Here you go. Have a good time. It took about 3 seconds for a cat to begin rubbing against Dobby's leg, purring like a motor. Dobby grinned, looking rather cat-like himself as he reached down to scratch behind its ears. What do you know? I'm popular. That's just because you're basically a personal space heater. Hawks huffed out, walking further in to sit down and pick up a cat toy. I mean, yeah, my body runs hot to counteract the ice. Dobby shrugged, and Hawks squinted. You don't have ice. No shit, Sherlock. I have insanely hot fire inside a body built to handle an ice quirk. That's why All for One called me a failed experiment, if you remember that particular fight. He sat down, picking up the gray tabby who had taken to him, into his lap, stroking its spine. The tabby yawned, stretching out, and eyeing Hawks with an unimpressed look. Hawks wondered if he should feel judged. The cat looked as if it was questioning why he had the right to be here in the presence of its lord and heat lamp, a simple mortal as he was. Hawks felt his wings fluff up behind him, glaring back to show the cat who was boss here. He had spent the past few weeks courting Dobby with bottle caps and shiny rocks from the rock garden out front of the hospital, thank you very much. Haruka had even taught him how to make paper flowers last Tuesday, which Dobby had mocked viciously, before setting it on his windowsill, with the other neatly arranged offerings. You aren't a failed experiment, Hawks bit out. You're more like avant-garde, or an expressionist painting. Something taken from the norm, twisted in a way that you wouldn't expect. Your work of art. And I think art is really beautiful. He finally finished, giving a shy smile. Dobby turned bright red, covering his face. Oh my god, shut the hell up. Hawks just laughed, while Dobby glared at him, cheeks slightly puffed up in annoyance, in a way that made his face look adorably round. Then a sharp tug at his wings made him break off, letting out a startled squawk and whipping around to see a small calico cat, holding one of his longer feathers in her mouth. "Hey!" he said, glaring. "Stop that! That hurts!" The cat blinked innocently, tugging on the feather harder. Hawks yelped again, and Dobby cackled from behind him, seemingly finding this to be the height of comedy. Prick. "Go play with a feather toy or something. My wings aren't for you." He tried again, attempting to bat her away. She just wriggled away, hanging onto the feather and effectively ripping it from his wing. Hawks shrieked, grabbing after her as Dobby fell over laughing behind him. "I'm glad you think this is funny," he spat, turning back around as another cat tried to grab at his other wing. "Actually, I find it hilarious," Dobby said, wiping a tear from his eye that might have just been there for dramatic effect. Hawks, being a professional and emotionally mature adult, stuck out his tongue and glared. Dobby just laughed harder, clutching at his sides as the tabby cat batted at his hair in annoyance at having his seat suddenly displaced. Hawks stood up, so his wings were out of reach for the felines, hissing back at the cat, who tried to climb up his leg. Dobby kept laughing throughout the whole ordeal, until suddenly, he got very quiet. Hawks looked up and stopped. Dobby was staring at his phone, hands shaking. "Dobbs?" Hawks asked cautiously, sliding over to perch at his mate's side. "What's going on?" Dobby turned the screen towards him, showing him the message from Shoto. "Mom wants to see you." "Oh," Hawks breathed. He reached a hand, linking their fingers together and squeezing. Do you want to see her?" Dobby paused, then nodded slowly. "I do. I just wasn't expecting it." Hawks gave a soft, sad smile. "You should call them and ask about it." "Alright," Dobby said, turning back and pressing the call button after a long moment of thinking. It rang several times before finally picking up. "Toya," a flat, soft voice answered. "What happened?" Dobby smiled softly. "Hey, Sho. Nothing's wrong, don't worry. Just saying hi." "Oh," Shoto replied, not seeming much affected by this. "Hi." A pause. "By the way, I had a flashback to our fight earlier during training and had a question. Did you mean it when you told me I was worthless and meant nothing? I just wanted to clarify." Dobby cringed. "No, I'm sorry about that too. You aren't useless." "Okay, got it, thanks." Shoto hummed. "Also, I tried that brand of chips you talked about. They're good, thanks." Hawks gave Dobby a look. Dobby just sighed. "Sho, most people don't open calls with trauma dumping." "It's not trauma dumping," Shoto said. "You already knew about it, since you actively caused it." "True, but not the point," Dobby said, sounding slightly exasperated. "Oh, is this a social convention thing?" Shoto asked, a bit more curious now. Dobby nodded. "Yeah, some people just might find it rude. I don't, but..." Shoto made a vaguely annoyed sound. "But I want to be rude. People are annoying." "Fair point. Actually, do whatever the fuck you want," Dobby said, fighting back laughter. Hawks wasn't faring much better, fist half in his mouth to stop from cackling. "If anyone gives you shit for it, I'll throw a couple flaming hands their way. I'm objectively more powerful than you and have much better control over my quirk, so that's a pretty stupid idea, but thank you for the sentiment," Shoto said, and Dobby let out a harsh chuckle. "Whatever you say, you little freak." Another long pause. "You said Mom wanted to see me?" "Mm-hmm." Shoto hummed in confirmation. "She does." "When?" "I don't know. Ask her yourself. She's sitting right next to me." Dobby let out a strangled, vaguely inhuman noise from somewhere in his throat, eyes wide. "What?" he said, voice half angry shout, half shocked sob. "She lives at home with us. We're having lunch." Dobby paused, then furrowed his brow. Should Shouldn't you be at school? The half-and-half teen made a non-committal noise. I had a panic attack during training, so Aizawa said I should go home for the day. Oh, that sucks, Dabi said sympathetically. Then his eyes flared again. Can I talk to Mom? Please? Just abandoning our date like that. Wow. Hawks murmured, just to be an ass, as if he didn't know this meant the earth and stars to Dabi, and would ever try and stop him. Dabi didn't respond, shoulders tense as he waited. You can drive over right now if you want. Dabi hung up, stood, and turned to Hawks. He said, seeming unable to ask. Hawks just kissed him gently. We'll come back another time. This is more important, baby. Dabi sniffed, nodding, and gave Hawks a tight hug, before turning and walking out. Shinso blinked as they left in a rush, but didn't say anything, going back to playing with the kitten who joined him on the counter. They got in the car and drove. Hawks had visited the Todoroki manor before. It was large, imposing in a way that dripped old Japanese money. Pulling up the long drive, spruce lining the edges of their shared vision, the snow-tipped mountain peaks stretching out in the background, he could see Dabi stiffen from beside him. Hawks paused. You sure? You could always ask her to come see us at the cafe or something, like you did with Shoto. No, Dabi said, but his voice was small, shoulders shaking. Hawks felt his heart break. Do you want to sit for a moment? Think about what you're going to say before we go in. Dabi considered it, then nodded, shoulders hunched and eyes dim. Are you going to come with me? He asked quietly, and Hawks nodded. Of course, baby. I'll go anywhere. Where you go, I go. Oh, Firefly, come here. He awkwardly leaned over the center console, pulling Dabi into his arms and burying his face into Dabi's shoulder. His wings smushed awkwardly in the cramped confines, and his stomach stretched uncomfortably from the angle. But none of it mattered at the physical shudder Dabi gave, tension releasing from his arms and shoulders as he leaned into the touch. They lay like that for a bit, until finally, Dabi seemed to calm down. I think I'm ready, he spoke, slipping out of Hawks' grip and unbuckling his seatbelt. Hawks nodded, unlocking the car doors and stepping out. Let's go do this, hot stuff. They knocked on the large wooden door, waiting for a few long agonizing moments before the lock clicked. Shoto, wearing slippers, a long black and white striped skirt, light yellow wild pussycat t-shirt, and a placid expression. Toya, Hawks, come in. They stepped back, letting the hero-villain duo step through. Toya gave Shoto a quick hug, which Shoto accepted with an expression that conveyed nothing but the barest repressed revulsion at the ordeal of physical contact. Having spent the last weekend with Tomura, who had hissed like a goddamn cat and left a sizable scratch on his arm when he touched her shoulder without warning, he guessed Shoto might be similarly touch-averse, and gave a sympathetic smile. Thankfully, Shoto had the grace not to try and physically maim their brother. They warmed away quickly when Toya let them go, motioning for them to follow them down the hall. Mom's in the kitchen. Chapter 36. Dabi swallowed hard, following his younger brother as they walked through the halls. The lights were mostly off, the glow of the warm early summer flooding the house with bright shafts of sunlight. The old dark wood of the walls had been painted in olive gray with cream accents. It felt like a whole different world from the one he'd grown up in. They turned to the right and into the kitchen, the main wall taken down, opening the space up into something that felt easy to breathe in. Toya looked around, trying to find remnants of their father, and blinked. Bright pop art and colorful flower portraits were hung to cover every stretch of blank wall. The fridge covered in photos and papers. He even thought he saw what looked like a report card. The bright windows at the front, opposite the kitchen space itself, let in light in swaths, shining on a shorter, worn-out-looking woman with long white hair. She was setting out a tea tray, turning to look as the three entered. Dabi felt his breath catch. Toya's here, Shoto said unceremoniously, crossing to make a grab as some of the Dorayaki left out. Ray, his mom, turned, staring at him and bringing a hand to her mouth. Dabi waited, hands trembling at his side. He knew he wasn't made to be loved. She had no obligation to love him. Not after he showed his family he had no interest in loving them for so many years. But he wanted her to. He wanted her to love him so badly it hurt. Toya, she breathed out, crossing the room and grabbing him, pulling him into her arms and squeezing him tightly. Oh, Toya, it's you. You're back. You don't know. I missed you so. Her voice cracked, swallowed by a sob as she stared at him, eyes roaming over his face. A hand went up to cup his jaw, as if she had to check he was real. Oh, baby, you've gotten so tall and so handsome. You take after your sister, you know. Oh, sweetheart, I'm so sorry I missed out on everything. Thank you so much for coming back. She sobbed out again, shaking her head and wiping at her tears. I've missed you so much. I can't believe you're so alive. All my children, alive and looking so beautiful. I'm either dreaming or I really am the luckiest woman alive. She smiled then, face shining with tears and joy, and Toya could only grab her and pull her back into a hug, shoulders shaking. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry. I love you. I love you so much. I'm so sorry. I love you. I'm sorry. He just kept repeating the two phrases, breath coming in choked gasps as Ray gently stroked his hair, murmuring comforting noises. Shh, it's okay, baby. Don't apologize. I love you. You're safe, baby. Hearing her say it stabbed into him even harder, and another sob ripped through him, knees buckling. She kissed his forehead, rubbing his back soothingly. You're okay, sweetheart. Come on, sit down. We can talk. Let me take your coat. Shuddering, he forced himself to pull away after a long moment, shakily handing her his leather jacket before taking a seat at the table across from her. His back was to the window. Ray's face lit up with sunbeams. Hawks followed cautiously, Toya reaching for his hand out of instinct. There was something nice, he realized, about having two people he trusted in the same room, sitting at his sides. It was almost like when his siblings had all hugged back during their therapy session. But it didn't need that type of closeness. It was the same warm sense of safety. He felt a complete sense of trust towards Ray and wondered hesitantly if he should be more suspicious of her. He knew that he wasn't the best with trust, but usually it was the lack of it, not too much. Toya decided to just go with it. Ray picked up her teacup, giving them a soft smile, golden eyes still glittering. Who is this? She asked, nodding towards Hawks. I'm Hawks, Hawks introduced, holding out his hand for her to shake with a charming, slightly crooked smile. The number one hero as of now. I'm something like Toya's probation officer, you could say. Toya snorted at the expert dodging of the question. Ray blinked, flushing in surprise. Her eyes flicked up and down, taking in his ruffled blonde waves, his red feather ear cuffs, fluffed up red wings, about a foot long now, piercing gold and silver eyes, warm sun-kissed skin, and slim muscular arms. His tattoo stood out against his shoulder, and Dabi had to admit it looked good on him, especially with the sleeveless black turtleneck he wore. Ray finally opened her mouth to reply, still seeming a bit flustered. Oh, well, nice to meet you. Thank you for your service. It's refreshing to see a young man like you take up the number one spot. Thank you for kicking my fuckface of a husband out of said spot, she did not say, but Toya felt it all the same. And thank you for agreeing to oversee my son's case. She bit her lip, seeming unsure of how to phrase it. It means a lot to me. Oh, I can assure you, it was no trouble. Hawks winked, and Toya scoffed, shaking his head and fighting back laughter. Keigo, stop that. Mom, this is my boyfriend of 4 months. Takami Keigo. Hugs, this is my mom. He said softer, feeling a smile creep across his face. Ray paused, registering the revelation, then gasped, eyes lighting up. Oh, I'm so happy for you two. I can't believe all my kiddos have found such lovely people. Have you met Fuyumi or Natsu's partners yet? They're lovely girls. I'm sure you would get along. Oh, I've met Tomura all right, Dabi muttered darkly, and Hugs elbowed him in the ribs. Hey, be nice to your sister-in-law. They're not married, Dabi griped, throwing his hands up. Ray just laughed, face bright again. Tell me about yourself, Toya. I want to know you. It's been so long. I feel like I have no idea who you are. What are your hobbies? What kind of food do you like? What have you been up to? She took his hands in hers from across the table, expression full of love. Toya's heart ached. But he still tried to tell her as much as he could. Ray listened intently, nodding, laughing, and interjecting with comments when something caught her attention. At the end, she was beaming at him like he was the sun. It was overwhelming, how much this was softening up all the rigid corners of his soul he didn't know he'd kept sharp. Was this healing? Was he finally getting better? Or at least finally feeling it in a capacity he understood? It makes me happy to see you happy, she said finally. You seemed so angry when I saw your video. You were so earnest as a kid. I was worried that I'd lost you. Her face fell, and Toya sighed, wincing. Sometimes I feel like I've lost the ability to be angry at all. Sometimes it's reassuring. Sometimes it just hurts. He sighed, pausing to sip from the teacup she'd put out. It was ginger tea, his favorite as a kid. The realization made him want to cry again. I'm glad I don't lash out as much anymore. I don't worry as much about hurting Keigo or Shoto again, which is nice. But on the other hand, sometimes I want to be angry. Ray looked thoughtful. Tracing a circle into his palm, she tilted her head. I felt the same way for a long time. With your father, I blocked out a lot of the anger I felt, since I felt if I was angry, people would think I was unstable, and it'd be one more day until I ever got to see my family again. She looked up, a sly smile passing over her lips. I found a way to help, though. You want to try? Shoto blinked, tilting their head. Should I cover? If you think the noise might bother you, I'd say that's a good option, Peppermint, she said, ruffling Shoto's half-and-half hair. They covered their ears, fighting back what looked to be a smile. I'll warn you, this might be loud, she said. But I do something called scream therapy. She stood up, grinning. You stand up, feet shoulder-width apart, and then let out a scream. Just let it out from your chest. Don't try to force it. It can hurt your vocal cords. Okay. Toya stood, a bit confused. She took his hands in hers, seeming almost younger in that moment, more jubilant. Think about something that makes you angry, okay? Immediately, Endeavor's face popped into his head, and he grimaced. It can be anything, she continued, smile never leaving her face. Stubbing a toe, a phone call you had, just gather everything you've been stressed about into your head. Take a deep breath and let it all out, okay? He nodded. Toya thought about Fuyumi punching him. He thought about Natsu and Tomura. He thought about the broken vending machines and Ogawa laughing at his anger, as if it was some joke to her. He thought about Murako, saying how she was going to replace him at the wedding. He thought about everything that had made him angry, and screamed. It felt in his chest, primal and tearing, and so good he almost didn't register anything for a full minute. The sound filled his lungs, his throat, leaping and clawing its way out of him and surrounding him. When he finally ran out of breath, he felt lighter, as if he'd been wearing a weighted vest that had finally been taken off and left in the alleyway of yesterday, as he padded into the starstruck streets of right here, right now. Ray was beaming, Hawk's open mouth behind her, and Shoto smiling softly from where they stood, ears covered. "That was a good one," she crooned, squeezing his shoulder. "But I think I can do louder. Want to find out?" He nodded, excited now, and she stepped back, taking a deep inhale, and then let out a scream of her own. It was terrifying, all pure rage and fire and fury and feelings he didn't know, but felt rattle inside him as the shock waves of her anger let themselves be known, crawling into the corners to settle as forgotten dust. Hawks clapped, letting out a whistle chirp, and Shoto gave an excited nod of approval. "Can I try?" Ray nodded happily, ushering her youngest forward and letting them take center place. Taking a slow breath, Shoto let out a yell. It wasn't a scream, really, but more of a battle cry, deep and guttural. A shout of pain and stress and confusion. Ray brought her palms up facing out, sliding them apart to the sides of her body. When Toya tilted his head, she smiled. "That's JSL for applause. Sho isn't a big fan of clapping, so..." Toya nodded, beaming, before he did the same thing. Shoto flushed, grinning. "Thanks. Can I..." Hawks looked uncertain, shutting up immediately as eyes turned to him. Dabi guessed he wanted a turn, but felt like he was intruding on their family. Idiot. "Go ahead," Ray said encouragingly, and Hawks let out a breath of relief. "Okay." He stood, took in a lungful of air, and screamed. Only it wasn't a scream. Screaming was a human action, the plainest expression of terror and anguish and rage. Whatever Dabi and Ray and Shoto had been doing, it was the loose imitation of primal instinct, of base emotion. This was pure animal. It was feral, louder than God's revolver, a ghostly shriek like he'd plunged his talons into their kamidana, ripped every spirit from it until they joined him in an orchestral, ephemeral sob. Toya was in love. He was so in love. Hawks was a predator in every sinewy cord of muscle and marrow that defined the word danger in this moment. And Toya wanted to slide himself against his stomach, listen to his heart, be enveloped by the pure energy that ripped through his soul. When the sound died away, Hawks stared, face flushing at their expressions. Did I do it right? Was I too loud? I'm sorry." Toya would have kissed him, but his mother and little brother were right there, so he managed not to, instead just taking his clawed hand. "That was perfect. You could be a metal singer, you know. You have the lungs for it." Ray nodded in agreement, bouncing slightly on her feet. "Like Terra Rosa, or the Saber Bells." Toya's mouth dropped open. "Do you like those bands?" Ray gave him a nod and a knowing grin, and Toya stepped forwards, nervous but excited. "We should go to a concert sometime, if you'd want to." "I'd love that," she reassured, ruffling his hair lovingly, and Toya could only try not to melt with sheer joy.